Hi and welcome to the BD at Home Wellness series. In this session we're going to be looking at some techniques to improve your sitting trot using the gym ball. So just to go through a few bits and pieces regarding the gym ball, you may already have one at home, in which case great. If you don't, you need one that is big enough so that when you sit on it with your feet about hip width apart, so that's about that far apart, we can find that distance by having the feet together and then just opening the toes a little bit and then opening the heels a little bit. When we're hip distance apart, we want to have the pelvis and the hips just slightly higher than your knees. So to see that from the side, you'll see that my hips are just a little bit higher than my knees. So there are lots of factors in a good sitting trot, and there are loads of exercises also which are really useful for helping to develop your capacity to absorb the force of your horse's movement and find it comfortable and balanced. But here are a few to get going with. We're going to go through a quick warm-up, then get into the main section of technique exploration, and then we'll do a couple of stretches to finish off with. So to begin, we're going to just start to bounce on the ball. So just bouncing up and down, a bit like a space hopper. And as you're bouncing, just take your attention to your feet and your seat. So we want to be bouncing and landing in the same place all the time. So notice if you're kind of kicking the ball off a little bit to one side, or if you're feeling pretty central as you move up and down. We also want to really notice the pressures and the weight distribution through your feet. So imagine that we're treating the floor in the same way as you would want your awareness into your two stirrups. So very, very even weight placement between left and right. So noticing if like one set of toes is kind of gripping, or you're pressing more into one foot than the other. So just really having an awareness of the floor as feedback really. There's definitely a seat-feet connection when we ride, so having a constant kind of awareness of the interplay between our weight distribution through the feet and also the seat bones is useful. Alright, so now we've been bouncing a little bit, we're going to add in some upper body movement just to get you a bit mobile and warmed up. So we're going to start with some breaststroke. So going swimming without even a pull necessary. And as you bring the upper body movement in, notice whether your tempo of bouncing has changed at all. Has the weight distribution through your seat changed? And has the weight distribution through your feet changed? So as you put a little bit of something in with the upper body, can you maintain that same awareness and that same symmetrical distribution through the rest of your body? So now we'll switch to front crawl. Just putting a little bit of rotation in through the upper body. And again, aiming to keep bouncing at exactly the same tempo. So one of the skills in riding is to be able to do one thing with one part of your body while still continuing to flow and move and keep an even rhythm and the required tempo with your hips and your pelvis. Let's take it into backstroke. And again, noticing as we move the upper body, what you can feel through your seat. Are you still landing in the same place? Are we leading more with one foot and leg than the other? Are you putting more effort in with one side of your body than the other? Okay, and then bring the upper body down. Now let's play about with that a bit. So we're going to purposefully now press more into the floor with your left foot. So I'll mirror, so this is my right foot, but you'll see it's left. So I'm going to really press into the floor with the left foot, just noticing how that feels through the rest of the body. And then just switch that over. So we're purposefully kind of taking more pressure on the other side, through the other foot, through the other leg. See how that feels through your body. Does that change things a little bit? It certainly does for me. I can feel a difference in my hips more on that side. And you can change between the two sides and then see if you can redistribute the weight to be totally even now, noticing if one of those options felt more familiar to you. So again, sometimes it can be useful to kind of exaggerate one side at a time to make things more apparent and then find your level again. Okay, so we'll just quietly stop bouncing. We should be a little bit warmed up now. And then let's take the pelvis through some motions. The types of motions that we would need to be able to move through when we're riding. And riding is a very 3D sort of sport, and particularly the sitting trot is, but we'll come back to that in a minute. So again, checking the weight placement through your feet. You can put your hands on the sides of your pelvis if you like, just to feel those kind of bony shelves. And then we're just going to roll the pelvis back and forth. So if you imagine your pelvis was a rocking chair, we've got these two rockers, one on either side, and you're very smoothly and evenly rocking on your rockers. If you'd like a breath pattern, most useful just to keep breathing generally, but if you'd like a breath pattern, it's probably useful to breathe in as your pelvis tips forward, so you rock towards the front edge of the rockers, and breathe out as your pelvis rolls backwards, so as you roll onto the back of the rockers. So breathing in to go forward and breathing out to roll backwards. And as you're doing that, and you're feeling your rockers are very, very even, don't want any wobbly rocking chairs. It's a well-constructed rocking chair. Just notice if you do feel any kind of side-to-side deviations. And again, we're taking the awareness to the feet. So as you're rolling back and forth, is one side of your body working a little harder? Is there a bit more pressure through one foot than the other? Or are you able to keep it relatively level? If you want to, you can do one side at a time, taking a little bit more on purpose, just to see how that feels, and then come back to the teamwork of the two together. So upper body staying soft, but relatively still. So the movement is mostly concentrated through the lower body. Okay, so let's now take the hips from side to side. So you can keep your hands here, just to feel what the sides of the pelvis are doing. And we're going to roll the ball from left to right. And this time you can imagine that your pelvis is like one of those, you know, those pirate ships you can get on a fairground that are kind of suspended in the middle, so this would be about here, and then you end up rocking from side to side. So we're going to imagine that this is going on in the pelvis. It's a very, very even motion. Make sure you're breathing. And you will feel the change through the feet with this, but is it an even change as your pelvis moves? Okay, and then let's try a different motion still. And this will be a rotation movement. So for this one, you're going to imagine that just in front of your knees, you have an invisible button, just in front. And again, keeping your hands on the sides of your hips, we're going to allow your left knee to travel forward to press the invisible button. And then you're going to switch. So allowing the right knee to travel forward, and the left knee will travel back. And you're going to alternate. So there's no real pause in the middle. It's a constant flow of motion. One goes forward as the other one goes back, and then we swap. And again, just make sure you're breathing. And you'll notice that each half, each side of your pelvis follows the knee. And And see if you can keep the upper body relatively still as you do that, softly still. And notice if as you travel, your hips are really wanting to lift at the same time. So you might notice kind of a lifting action as one knee goes forward or back. We're going to aim to keep them relatively level. So just pushing those little buttons one at a time. Have a look from the side. If you can do this in front of the mirror, this is really helpful because you can then check what you're doing from the front. You can also check what you're doing from the side, so in case you're kind of really forward or even back. It's not usually that people will tend to go backwards, but you know, occasionally that can happen. Okay, so here is the money shot. We're going to combine the bouncing that we did earlier with the push the button. So let's get a bounce going in a trot type action, trot type speed. Checking in through the feet. And then we're going to add on the little push the button. And what you will notice as you do that, so we're doing one push for each bounce, you'll notice that your seat bones are creating a little scoop, 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 scoop on the ball. Now if you visualise how a horse moves in trot, their legs are moving in diagonal pairs. As each hind leg steps through under the body, the rib cage swings away. And as the rib cage swings away, that brings your seat bone, into this little action. So it is not just an up, down or forward, back movement. It's very much a 3D movement actually to absorb the oscillations of the horse's spine and the horse's rib cage. So when you're doing your sitting trot, if you can just observe how much your horse puts that type of movement through your pelvis and just go with it, you might find that you've got more adhesion to the saddle and you can move with more fluidity. Okay, so how's that going? We could make the movements bigger if you want to. So it's all those little elliptical motions that we're creating with the seat bones for a longer trot, or we could create shorter movements for a shorter trot. And then just have a little rest for a moment. So one of the big things that is so influential with improving the sitting trot is breathing. And you've probably heard that loads of times before, and it's probably a really obvious thing to say, but nevertheless, when people come for help with their riding, there are many, many occasions where they will say, well, I'd like to improve my core stability for whatever reason, and it's often to do with improving the sitting trot. I'd like to improve my core stability. My trainer says I need to improve my core stability, or somebody else says, or I just feel I need to improve my core stability. And that's great, and that's really useful. However, I would add to that it's often not so much about the core stability and more to do with fluidity and finding a sense of moving with the horse and flowing with the breath. And in fact, the breath has such a huge impact. The mechanism of breathing in a helpful way has a huge impact on the symmetry, the fluidity through your hips, your lower back, and in fact all the way down to your ankles and your feet, which are obviously absorbing movement through the stirrup. So let's add a little bit of a breath pattern into our sitting trot movement. So we'll go again. So we'll just start to bounce, and then we'll add our little push the button. Now I'd like you, with your little sitting trot motion that you've got going on, to breathe in for as many little motions, so this would be horse's steps, as you feel comfortable to do, And then we're going to breathe out for the same number. So I'll have a go and see what's comfortable for me. So I think 4 actually, 4 of these little motions I can breathe in and breathe out for. I'll kind of keep that going. So that's going to be your homework, to see how many of your horse's steps you can comfortably breathe in for, and see if you can breathe out for the same number. Again, there are loads of different breathing techniques that you can try, but let's just go for even Stevens and see how we do. Now, just a word of note. When you start to put in that little motion of each half of your pelvis moving individually, there may be a tendency for your upper body to join in at first. This is not really what we're looking for. The upper body is going to stay relatively still whilst the pelvis does its thing. It's a bit like if you've ever watched a duck or a swan on the surface of the water. They look really serene, nothing's really happening, they're just gliding along, but under the water there's all of this going on. So this is a little bit like how we are going to be moving. So let's try that again. This time, hold your hands as if you're holding the reins. So here I am with my bouncing. Here I am with my push the button joining in. And aiming to keep the upper body facing forward. And the hands relatively still. So what we're not doing is this, okay? Hands are staying steady while the lower body is moving. Now at the moment, of course, you're generating this movement. So it's, you know, you might think, oh, crikey, it's a bit hard work. You're generating it all. But when you're riding, your horse is obviously providing you with this motion. You're just moving with it. So it'll be hopefully a little bit less work for you. It's a case of feeling, absorbing, moving with. And also, once you're in the saddle, what you're going to be doing is having the focus on the seat, not the knees. I know that, again, probably sounds a bit of an obvious thing. You're not going to be sending your knees anywhere when you're actually riding. It's the motion through the pelvis and the seat that you're looking for. So let's go again. Bouncing, push the button, focusing on the scooping action through the seat bones rather than what the knees are doing. So again, I'll show you that from the side. Okay, so I promised you a couple of little stretches when you've done your hard work, so here they come. So we'll come off the Swiss ball, we'll have a little lie down on your mat and place your lower legs on top of your ball. And we're going to have the arms down by your side. And just take a moment to allow your body to just sink into the floor, melt into the floor. Just reach slightly away from you with your fingertips, just to allow your shoulders to melt down away from your ears. And then your own time, we're just going to slowly roll the ball from side to side with control. Just allowing each hip to float off the floor in turn. You notice it's not actually a stretch, it's actually a sneaky abdominal workout. No, it will be a stretch in a minute, I promise. Okay, and then centralising your pelvis, and then you can just move your ball out of the way. And then place your feet on the floor. My ball wants to stay with me. And then we're going to cross your right thigh over your left thigh. And then just roll slowly from one side to the other without uncrossing your legs. And just rolling slowly from one side to the other. And just pausing, hanging around a little bit in the position, allowing your breath to fill the opening side of your body. We'll go once in this new direction. And again, allow your upper body to sink and melt into the floor. And then just using your waist muscles to bring you back to the middle, we're going to uncross your thighs and cross them the other way. And again, rolling once to each side without really any pausing, so just very smoothly. And then we're going to wait a moment in each position. So allowing the upper body to sink and melt again. And just pausing here, allowing the breath to fill the side of the body, feeling the body opening, lengthening as the breath makes its way all the way down through your body, your trunk, into your hips and into your legs. Using your waist muscles to bring you back to the centre and then over to the other side. We'll pause in this position and breathe. And then in your own time, on an out breath, we'll come back to the centre, uncross your legs, and then we're just going to roll onto the side now, because we did quite a bit of work in the sitting, did quite a bit of work actually through your legs. So we're just going to make a little pillow for your arm on the side of your body with your legs just slightly bent. We're going to take hold of your top ankle with your hand. If you can't reach your ankle, maybe you can reach your clothing. If you can't reach your clothing easily, then you might want to just lasso your ankle with a scarf or a bandage. Okay, so just into a little bit of a quad stretch here, and we're going to think about maintaining a connection between your pubic bone and your sternum. So gently feeling that you are using your abdominals to draw your pubic bone, tip your pubic bone up towards your nose. Just to feel that it is the thigh, the front of the thigh, that is stretching, rather than kind of drawing your leg back and feeling it in your back at all, or changing the shape of the spine. That's not what we're doing in this one. If you'd like a little bit more in that stretch, what you can do is place your lower ankle just on top of your knee, above the knee, and you'll feel that slightly more down the outside of the thigh. Again, maintaining that little bit of abdominal connection just to target the area that we're focusing on. Okay, and then we will release that, and then let's do the other side. So we'll have a swivel around, make your little pillow, slightly bent knees, just a wee bit, and then taking hold of your ankle, keeping it relatively level with your hip, and again maintaining that connection between your pubic bone and your sternum. So almost imagining that there's a little kind of electrical current that's alive between the pubic bone running all the way up to your breastbone, making sure that stays connected. And again, if you want a little bit more, you can place that bottom ankle just above your knee. making sure you're breathing. And allowing that top shoulder just to melt down away from your ear. Okay, and then releasing that stretch. And then we'll just come up to seated. So I hope you enjoyed that little series. You've got a few tips and tricks to play with there to help with your sitting trot. And please let me know how you do. I'll see you next time.